We had the Japanese Emperor and Empress visiting the United Kingdom on an official state visit. We have Prince William continuing to thrive with his Earthshot Prize program. We have an official visit between the Netherlands and Qatar. King Felipe is in Estonia this week. There was Luxembourg National Day and Prince William's birthday with a wonderful shot of him and the kids. And of course, many, many, many royal Swifties. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of the Crown Report. My name is Brittany, and on this program, we try to go over some of the major royal news stories about the past week or so. So if you guys enjoy this program, might like to hear more about what royals are doing across Europe, feel free to go ahead and hit the subscribe or follow button. We would just absolutely love to have you back. And this week for our sort of official big story, because we like to do somewhat reporting on smaller events and we like to take one particular story or thread and really dig into it. And this week, we're going to talk about really the effects of streamlining and slimming down the British monarchy, and particularly that Prince William is apparently into this plan and what it could mean for the future, because there's some pretty dire implications and some things I'm wondering if people are really thinking through. So, when it comes to the British monarchy and particularly tripping the color, of course, we all know the famous balcony. And it used to be that we had, you could say, probably 24 people or more up on the balcony. So this not only includes the main line of the royal family, but the Gloucesters and the Kents and some others in between. So it's an opportunity to see the entire family, kids included, and it's just a lot of fun. However, during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, they decided to pull that back a bit. Of course, COVID happened in between that as well. And they decided to go with just working royals. And there were a couple of reasons for that, because not only did we have COVID, we also had the leaving of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle from the royal family and sort of the disastrous exit that they had. And then we also had the scandals involving Prince Andrew. And so, to avoid sort of the clash of potentially people who are upset that they're not on the balcony, the decision was to go with, well, only working royals. Now, while I think that really did sort of work with the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, because at the end of the day, it was really about cementing her legacy and showing the route for the future, which was very, very apt given that she died later that year. However, it seems like William is going to continue his father's vision of a slimmed down monarchy. Now, I will say I'm not completely against the idea of a slimmed down monarchy. I've said many times it is actually something royals across Europe are doing in Spain, in Sweden, in Norway, in the Netherlands, Belgium. Usually they stick to basically the main lines of succession. They don't really venture too much outside that. And while I understand it, the British are in a bit of a different situation. In fact, they are the country with the largest population that also has royals. In addition, you have the Commonwealth nations, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, which also offer millions of people to potentially reach. And if you add the whole Commonwealth, every country that is part of it, you're getting into the billions. And I'm just wondering if William is totally thinking through, because he's going to not only continue his father's legacy here, he's going to make it essentially, it sounds like, just himself, Catherine, George, and George's wife. Now, we may still have a bit of Sophie and Edward working, but we're looking at not only a sort of slimmed down monarchy, like a bare bones basic monarchy. And I think that has some risks. And we see this completely exemplified in the recent horse related accident of Princess Anne that put her in the hospital for 5 days. So, once again, the royals are down one of their most prominent and popular members. So, if you do not know, in the latest EU government poll in May 2024, Princess Anne was named as one of the three most popular royals, in addition to Catherine, the Princess of Wales, who had 74%, and Prince William, who had 73%. Princess Anne was on the list at 70%. So, right now, the royal family is without two of the three most popular members. So they are down to just a third of what they could be. Now, granted, there's obviously other members of the family as well, but when you're thinking about the most popular, being without those couple of critical elements is very huge, especially because Anne does more engagements than anyone else. And in more particularly, she does the bread and butter engagements that I would argue that Catherine and William don't do quite as much. Anne does the very small local engagements oftentimes, and she does a couple a week at least. And while the royal family definitely could not anticipate three health crises in 1 year, it should be a bit of a warning, I think, to Prince William as well. Beware of the follies of not thinking through what a slimmed down monarchy would actually mean? And according to a report by Richard Eden, a friend of Prince William said that he was in full agreement with his father about the need for a slimmed down monarchy. The friend also said, when the older members of the royal family retire, His Royal Highness won't be inviting anyone else to become working royals. It remains to be seen if he will even want his two younger children to be working royals. If this is true, it could perhaps lead to a disaster in the making for the British monarchy, and eventually, you could even argue, maybe even lead to its collapse. And this proposition has some serious, serious problems. The first is that Prince William and Catherine will have to increase their workloads dramatically in the future in order to fill the void left by other members of the family. So, throughout most of their tenure as royals, the Waleses, and I know people sometimes get upset for saying this, have had it really easy compared to most of their contemporaries. Now, while I'm aware of the fact that while they were newlyweds, young parents, the heir to the heir, and now with the steep health crisis and everything, some of the cautious approach to a working royal life was understandable. However, some of those excuses will not last forever. The kids are getting older. They are now obviously the heirs, so that they have to increase the workload. And they're starting to do that. And granted, this year with Catherine's health crisis has definitely messed this up for sure. But sometimes I think William and Catherine sometimes are so focused on doing sort of some of these bigger royal engagements or having a bigger impact in some ways that they forget that it's actually sometimes these smaller engagements that Princess Anne does that's really the foundation of the monarchy in some ways. Because there was a report, and I did a whole video on it, which I'll link up above. It was, I think, last year, talking about how actually royals going and meeting with smaller groups of people and really sort of getting out into the country and everything really has a greater impact than some of these bigger engagements that I think Catherine and William tend to gravitate more to. Because yes, they're doing a lot of little mini engagements in one community. But sometimes it's reaching these smaller things that definitely don't hit the radar all the time. That actually has a bigger impact. It's a shaking of the hands. It's a meeting a member of the royal family, which really does change things. And in order for the British monarchy to continue well into the future, it needs working members. Engagements that I was discussing, like these smaller ones, were taken mostly by Princess Anne and the Queen's cousins, the Gloucesters and the Kents. And they don't generate a lot of press attention, but they have an impact. And once they retire, then who will take on those roles? William and Catherine, again, want to have a bigger impact with these bigger engagements. And I can't quite remember the phrase they were trying to use because they were trying to do something where they would go into a local community, raise money beforehand, give out that money, and then do a couple of other things, which is great. But you also need to balance it with those more banal events that maybe aren't quite as, you could say, flashy and have a greater impact in some ways in the long run. So, when it comes to Spain, I think Spain is a great example that the UK should look at because while it only has a population of 47 million compared to the British about 67 million, the king and queen work constantly. King Felipe, Queen Letizia are the two hardest working royals in Europe. They have multiple engagements a week. They work throughout the summer oftentimes. They still let the press in for different events they're doing as a family. Like they work hard and they are in front of the cameras all the time. And yes, they could say, I know the excuse is, well, Catherine and William, they have young children. Well, when King Felipe and Queen Letizia became the monarchs of Spain, they also had two children who were 8 and 7, and they managed it. Same thing with the Netherlands. Catherine Amalia, I think, was about 9 or 10 when her parents became the king and queen. And she had two other younger sisters. Meanwhile, Catherine and William tend to be a bit more of a one engagement a week kind of royals. And yes, I know they also work behind the scenes. But like Her Majesty said, Queen Elizabeth, you must be seen to be believed. And yes, you can tell us till you're blue in the face that you're working behind the scenes. But if nobody sees you working, that excuse, obviously, I don't think always necessarily works. And they'll also tend to take off a lot of time while their kids are out of school, saying that they won't do any engagements. Now, I understand that because, again, if they raise the most well-behaved, well-adjusted royal children, like they'll be worth their weight in gold, 150%. But again, you can't look too far into the future that you don't also connect with the present either. Again, this is all a careful balance. And they run the risk sometimes, I think, of looking a bit out of touch because they can go away for a month or two and not do anything. And other people are like, well, my kid's out of school too, and I still have to work. And so it is one of those things that I want to say always is a very, very careful balance that must be maintained. And I know some people don't like any sort of criticism on Catherine and William. But these are important discussions to be had because if you just focus on Catherine and William, it seems like they're doing a lot. But when you compare them to the rest of Europe, sometimes it just doesn't seem to be quite as much. That is just something to be aware of because, yes, royals, they work in different ways. But if you're not making an impact in the long run, potentially, again, you do run the risk of losing out on the whole thing. And right now, there is a strong anti monarchy movement. And so the best you can push against that by just being out there in the forefront as much as possible, the better off you'll be. Obviously, this year, again, completely and utterly understandable that that is just not really happening. We totally understand that. But you just got to wonder in the future, especially as Catherine and William get older, the kids get older, and they're thinking, well, we can just do it ourselves with George and his wife. I'm like, I just don't know if that is necessarily as possible as they think it is. Speaking of the kids, the second problem with the slim down approach for William is that likely he will have to deny George the same opportunity he had to enjoy a slow introduction to a full time working royal. William, as the heir to the heir, got an incredibly slow introduction. Like him and Catherine, I don't think were full time working royals really for the first 5 or 6 years of their marriage. He was still an air ambulance helicopter pilot, which I think is great because that real world experience is fantastic. But that isn't the case anymore because obviously now Charles is king. And William had a very, very, very different experience to most of his contemporaries because most of the heirs of Europe became the heirs under the age of majority. So Crown Princess Victoria has essentially been the crown princess since birth. She briefly lost it when her brother was born and he became crown prince because at the time it went with the boy, whoever was the boy within the family. Then the laws changed and it was whoever was born first. So obviously Crown Princess Victoria got actually her title back, which led to a bit of kerfluffle with Carl Gustav. He is still not happy about that. And you have much the same with King Frederick. He became the crown prince quite young. I think when he was 4, 5, 6, something like that, very young. And we also have Princess Catherine Amalia, Princess Elizabeth of Belgium, Princess Leonor of Spain. They all became the heirs as children and are already integrating into royal life and taking on engagements as they can. Princess Leonor is a great example. She did the whole becoming the adopted daughter of Zaragoza over there in Spain. She has done a couple of other things. She's actually doing her first solo royal engagement to Portugal, a foreign country. I mean, granted, they're right next to each other and they share a long history, but still, Princess Elizabeth is still in school. She actually went to Oxford and then went over and is now going to study and get, it sounds like, a master's degree in public policy from Harvard. And so she is going to be going through school. Catherine Amalia was in college, but she's also coming back and doing some royal engagements with her family as well. She was there for the Spanish state visit because of the close relationship, and she spent part of the last year or so in Spain due to threats to her life in the Netherlands. So yes, they're having these different experiences, but William didn't go to his first state function in terms of state visit. I want to say until 2015 with Xi Jinping, and Catherine Amalia did it about 10 years younger. So again, it's just something to consider because again, William has had a very different experience. And I think sometimes people think they've had this experience and expect the younger generation to have the same experience. But the reality is they won't because he spent most of his early 20s in military training, going to college and university, which was all great. And he also did a fair amount of club hopping as well. We have a lot of pictures to prove that. And it's obviously he was young, he wanted to have fun. The other royals do it as well. But George won't probably get that opportunity because they will need him to work because there is no one else. Because once the Kents and the Gloucesters retire, they're all Duke of Kent, I believe, is 88. Princess Alexandra has pretty much already retired. You have the Gloucesters who are in their 70s. Charles is in his 70s. And so you only have Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, who is 59, the only other royal member of the family who is not 60 and above, besides Catherine and William. So Catherine and William, they are everything. They are everything. They're everything right now. And the third problem is here is that the royal family never adjusted after Prince Harry and Meghan Markle left. because the slim down and monarchy approach would work if you had Charles, Camilla, obviously Edward and Sophie. You also have Anne, and then you'd have Harry and Meghan, Catherine and William. And you could have this larger monarchy approach. And in between the time that the old guard retiring and the new guard coming up, you could have those people in the middle. However, with Harry and Meghan leaving, you just get the sense that nothing has ever been adjusted since. It's like, okay, well, we decided this. We're not going to elevate anyone. We're just going to keep going in X direction. And again, I think that's a bit of a mistake because you did need Harry and Meghan, not necessarily Harry and Meghan themselves, but you need somebody like them. You need somebody in that age gap to kind of help hold things over until the Waleses kids come of age. And I think that's really, really important because Harry is not going to come back unless he's on his hands and knees after a divorce. It's just not going to happen. And so the royal family, they do need somebody. I think Princess Beatrice would be great. Princess Eugenie, maybe, Lady Louise, Earl of Wessex would be another example. Zara Tyndall and Mike Tyndall would be great, although they don't have titles. And I thought it was great when we saw William with his cousins at the Buckingham Palace garden party because you need those young faces, those people who generate more press attention. And I think that is a good thing. That is a really good thing because they don't have Harry and Meghan. And they did need that. So they need to adjust in some way. And it's obviously hard, especially if the other royals are like, hey, I like my private career. But I think somebody like Princess Beatrice, who has a real appreciation for history, I think she would be very excited to serve. And I think she would do a good job. I'm not so sure about Princess Eugenie. She's in a bit of a different field with art. But feel like other members of the family would be like, yes, yes, I can do it. I'm proud to do it and those sorts of things. And I think, again, that's not a bad thing. I think the royal family kind of sort of desperately needs it. And the other thing to consider, and this is just the reality of having somebody in your family who has had cancer, especially somebody as young as Catherine, is that there's a chance of reoccurrence. There's also a chance of further health struggles down the line. And so William at this point, I think, has to make some really tough decisions here because obviously, right now, Catherine has been out for half of 2024. We probably will see her at Wimbledon. That has always been my theory is that we'll see her some at Wimbledon. And I think that'll be good because it's outdoors. And it's also an opportunity, too, for her to participate in something she really enjoys. And joy, I did this whole the Crown Report video. Joy is an important part, I think, of recovering, finding things that you enjoy in life and being part of that. That's important to recovering in cancer as you go forwards. And so William has to think in the future that when everything was in perfect health and everybody was fine, obviously you don't have to adjust that much. But once somebody in your family has cancer, that is always a cloud hanging over you that can always come back. It can always reoccur, or you can have something else because the treatments, the surgeries, whatever could have a further implication down the line. And once again, William might be without his bride for a significant period of time as she recovers. So my suggestion to William would be to think about that. That's not a pleasant reality to consider. But I think he is going to have to recognize too that because of this situation going on within his family, the outcome of his life and his wife and his children, it's all changed a bit. And so he needs to adjust accordingly. And so this is obviously all in thinking through what the future holds. And we don't know what the future holds. But here is the thing I think that needs to happen is that not only will William and Catherine and George and whoever he marries be working royals, I think they'll need their two other kids too. They'll need Princess Charlotte and they'll need Prince Louis and whoever their spouses are because they need a robust working family because the British Isles, again, you have 67 million people to try and impact every week through royal engagements and different things and trying to help support this culture of Britain. Because as Britain becomes more multicultural, the monarchy's influence, you could say, is sort of eroded at some points because if these other people come in and they're not British and they end up going, you know what, I don't really care about that. I didn't have that in my country, so I don't really care. If they don't impact and go show how great the monarchy is, again, you run a risk of ending up in a situation you don't really want to. So Prince William, I think, had some really tough decisions to make in the future. And I think, though, this is an important discussion to have. I will always stand by that. This is an important discussion to have because I feel like too often people are like, well, Harry and Meghan are so bad. You can't criticize Catherine and William. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I think it's a healthy to have a good outlook and a critical outlook on things from time to time. And I think the slim down monarchy, looking at this picture, it just makes me a bit sad on that balcony. Not that you need to elevate everyone, but I think a couple, I think, would be good. And I don't think the monarchy should be scared either to tell Andrew and Harry and Meghan if they want to come on the balcony. Unfortunately, we can't let you do that. We can let other people come, but you guys have become problematic. You have become problematic to our brand, and there's not really a reason to invite you. And so that is something again to consider for the future, how the future looks. So what do you guys think? Do you think we may see a change up in the monarchy here in the future or not? I would love to get your thoughts. Of course, the big event of the week was the state visit by the Emperor and Empress of Japan, who arrived in the United Kingdom after previously rescheduling a state visit that had been extended to them by Queen Elizabeth II. And of course, due to COVID and then Her Majesty's death, it just kept getting pushed further back. The state visit began with Prince of William, the Prince of Wales, greeting the imperial couple at their hotel and traveled with them to inspect the guard of honor at the Horse Guards. The royals then headed back to Buckingham Palace in horse-drawn carriages for a private lunch. And then afterwards, they got to do something which I always think is so incredibly cool. They got to view a special exhibition from the royal collection of items that originally came from Japan. And this, of course, is a very, very common occurrence during the state's visits and an opportunity to show off the relationship between the two countries, perhaps gifts that were exchanged between the monarchs. And so it's just a great opportunity to again think about that shared history together that they have between these two nations. As we see through the speeches during the state banquet, there is 400 years of history between these two countries. As you can see here, the royals arriving back at Buckingham Palace, and Her Imperial Highness Empress Masako was wearing a mask due to horsehair allergy that you will see here. But I think everybody looked absolutely fantastic. And the Emperor and King Charles have a strong relationship going back to the time when the Emperor was taking some classes there at Oxford. And so here you can see them viewing the royal collection with other members of the royal family and then extended presences of the Japanese imperial household, those who are part of the diplomatic delegation. And you can also see the press in the mirror, which I think is hilarious. All right, guys, so here we come to the state visit. We have Empress Masako in the chrysanthemum tiara for the first time. We also have Sophie debuting a new tiara, the lotus flower tiara, and Camilla is in the Burmese ruby tiara. So let's go ahead here as they enter in. You can see everybody there for the speeches and presentations and the dinner. And the chrysanthemum is very special to Japanese because the throne is called the chrysanthemum throne. So as they get settled here, we can take a look. And I love Sophie. Let's go ahead and take a listen to their speeches.
Your Majesties, my wife and I are so delighted to be able to welcome you to Buckingham Palace this evening. E koko ni o keiri nasai. Welcome back to Britain. For over 400 years, our nations have inspired each other, learning from each other's experience and enriching our industries, cuisines, and cultures with elements borrowed and shared. Today, as we face a world in which these principles are ever more challenged, our shared values of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law are more important than ever. Our talented scientists are also working together on research and technology to help address some of the most pressing challenges that face our planet. The seriousness and urgency of the climate and nature crises we face cannot be overstated. In addition, I know that our two countries are collaborating ever more closely to provide for our shared security. Our armed forces are exercising and sharing expertise at great levels, as befits two powers with an enduring commitment to global peace and security. Supporting all these shared endeavors are the enduring ties between our people that transcend geography. And that does not just mean how much we enjoy tea and talking about the weather. And as Studio Ghibli's anime continue to delight audiences worldwide with Hayao Miyazaki's wonderful The Boy and the Heron, scooping an Oscar earlier this year. Equally, it has been a pleasure to learn of the British stories behind certain Japanese cultural icons. Perhaps you would allow me to note one particular individual who turns 50 this year. So I can only wish a very happy birthday to Hello Kitty. I'm only sorry to report that I haven't had any better luck with more recent attempts at fishing. The Pokemon phrase, gotta catch 'em all, may resonate with my grandchildren, but for me it is perhaps aspirational. In 1613, Tokugawa Ieyasu wrote to my forebear, King James I, he said, "Though separated by 10,000 leagues of clouds and waves, our territories are, as it were, close to each other." Over 400 years later, that sentiment remains at the heart of our friendship, and to the next 400 years of Japanese-British relations. Kanpai.
I would like to express my sincere appreciation for the invitation you have extended to the Empress and me for this state visit. In fact, the original invitation was issued 5 years ago by Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, whom I greatly admired. Your Majesty has just referred to our two countries' long-standing ties in showing us items from the royal collection related to Japan. We now have an even stronger sense of the deep significance of the exchange between Japan and the United Kingdom. I am personally pleased and also grateful to have played a part in the between the two countries, having studied in the United Kingdom, and in particular was privileged to enjoy the very warm company of members of the royal family. The Empress and I would like to express our deep respect and gratitude to those people who have dedicated immeasurable efforts to the friendship between our two countries, extending firmly into the future. It was also my father's sincere hope that our two peoples would continue to strive for true mutual understanding. Today, our society is increasingly diverse and complex, facing various global challenges. One such area is the contribution that Japanese and British scientists have made to the world through cutting-edge medical research. According to Sir Kazuo, the analog computing system that Dr. Ishiguro developed based on his research looked like a TARDIS, a time machine from the BBC drama Doctor Who. May I pay my respect concerning the initiatives Your Majesty has taken with both passion and a sense of urgency in such critical areas as climate change and biodiversity. I look forward to visiting again the Royal College of Music, where I can see the state-of-the-art performance laboratory. We also plan to visit Oxford, where the Empress and I both experienced the life and culture of this country as students. It is my sincere hope that both Japan and the UK, as friends like no other, will continue to make untiring efforts for true mutual understanding, thereby building an enduring relationship based on friendship, goodwill, and cooperation. I would now like to propose a toast and to the lasting happiness of the people of Japan and the United Kingdom.
So I love hearing what all of them said about each other. I love the little quip about Hello Kitty. And then I really like too that Emperor Naruhito was really paying very close attention to Charles. I think part of that is just making sure he understood because English is obviously not his main language. And so the next day, the Emperor Naruhito attended a banquet at Guildhall, which you can see here in London, but without Empress Masako, who was taking it easy that second day. She has had a lot of struggles with her health, especially since marrying into the Japanese royal household. So the imperial court called her condition when she initially married an adjustment disorder. But it appears to be the case in the imperial household, as we've seen sort of many times over the years, that the standards are so rigid and everything is so rigid and constricting that many times the women just really struggle to function within the household. There's a lot of pressure, obviously, to have boys, have sons, because those are the only ones who can inherit the throne. Previous empress also had a bout of mutism, and Empress Masako has really struggled to undertake many royal engagements, and she has rarely traveled outside the country since becoming empress or even just crown princess of Japan. She was able to join her husband the next day, though, as they bid their official and warm goodbyes to King Charles and Queen Camilla. The next day, the couple spent time at Oxford University, where they both previously studied. And so she is very well educated. She speaks multiple languages. And I've said it before that it just seems a very Stepford wife, how the wives act within the Japanese imperial household. And I don't know the specifics because obviously there's a language barrier and those sorts of things. But from my understanding, it's very much that the imperial household, I don't think in the case the emperor himself, is just so constricting with the standards and everything that most women just have a really, really hard time with it. And it is the case as well. If you are born a princess of Japan, if you don't marry another prince within the Japanese extended imperial household, which is actually very small at this point, and I think most of them are old men who are still available, then you are essentially kicked out of the household. You lose your title. You are no longer going to any official functions and you're essentially kicked out. And you are given a dowry as you leave, but I just find the whole process is just literally kicking them out and seeming to separate them from the rest of the imperial household just a little different for sure. All right, so next we have Prince William at the Earthshot Innovation Camp. So this occurred during London's Climate Action Week, and Palace Aid shared with the Daily Mail that William's focus for the summit was on helping entrepreneurs grow their businesses, something his Earthshot Prize also hopes to achieve. So the two notable attendees here, obviously, you can see that there is Hannah Waddingham there from obviously Ted Lasso fame, but the other two big attendees are Bill Gates and Michael Bloomberg, two American billionaires. And while Gates remains a somewhat controversial figure for a lot of different reasons, what I want to point out here is that William, through Earthshot Prize, is attracting some really, really large scale donors and supporters who can help extend Earthshot Prize, keep it going, and maybe perhaps even extend what prizes are given, how much is given, and all these sorts of things, which I think is really great for William. And in a speech at the event, William said, "For me, the magic behind the success we have enjoyed so far has been the power model for growth that we built. We're not only discovering, selecting, and awarding transformative solutions from around the world, we're also shining a light on them, introducing them to networks of influence and resources, and providing them with vital communities of support." And as I said, Hannah Waddingham was there, and also Stella McCartney, who is a fashion designer and obviously the daughter of Paul McCartney. Now, what I will say, what I found frustrating when I was looking for more information about the event is that many publications just focused on William's tie because it's recycled. It's made of recycled material. And obviously, that's interesting, but I just found that a bit frustrating that that seemed to be all of what certain people were focused on. And I'm like, well, the tie is great, but I want to hear about the event itself. So I found that very interesting. Just thought I'd mention that too. So next, guys, we had the official visit between the Netherlands and the Emir of Qatar. And so as you will notice, this is not a state visit, it's just an official visit. So Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim, and his wife Sheikha Jawahar, which apparently means jewels, paid an official visit to the Netherlands on June 24th. He was received by King Willem Alexander and Queen Maxima. He is also meeting with government officials, including now outgoing Prime Minister Mark Rutte. And the purpose of the visit was to continue strengthening and broadening relations between the two countries. Other areas of discussion include water, sustainable energy, food, and maritime sectors. Qatar remains an important partner on issues of stability and security, according to the Dutch royal household. In a speech at lunch, King Willem Alexander said, "Your Highness, as a representative of a new generation, you have developed your own perspective on the future of your country. Under your father and grandfather, Qatar achieved many things that are worthy of respect. Now we see that under your leadership, Qatar continues to build on that solid foundation and formulate responses to the challenges we face today. Prosperity remains important, but climate action, health, and the quality of life also requires attention. You advocate diversifying the economy and balancing economic growth with environmental protection. Sustainability is an important issue that unites us." And so, what I will point out, which is interesting too about Qatar and specifically this emir, is that his father is still alive. So, his father is like the emir emeritus, you could say. And he is actually the son, the second son of the emir's second wife, Sheikh Samoza. Now, I've actually followed Sheikh Samoza just a smidge because she's well known for having impeccable fashion taste. And she was really the representative of Qatar at many foreign royal events. And it's just interesting to see the dynamics because obviously most of the Qatari emirs have multiple wives. And so when it comes to Sheikh Samoza, she was obviously the second wife, but clearly the preferred wife because not only did she go to all the foreign royal events, and so she's become a rather well-known, you could say, figure in certain circles, is that her son, one of her sons, is actually the one who inherited the emirship of Qatar. And as it turns out, her firstborn son apparently passed on the role, and so it went to her secondborn son. So, anyways, and he has three wives apparently, and so though he is traveling with his first wife, if in case you were curious, he has three, and one of them owns the most expensive home in Turkey, apparently. And I looked at pictures of it online and I didn't find it all that impressive. But again, just interesting tidbits because obviously, when you think of especially foreign royal households and everything, they operate very, very differently than most of the European households. When it comes to especially the Middle Eastern households, oftentimes the succession goes through essentially you could say popularity or favoritism is more likely. So favoritism, whoever the emir, the king, whoever decides is his favorite among his many sons, because many of them do have multiple wives, not all of them, but some of them do. And so they choose who they want when it comes to Jordan, for example, as well. For a while, the king's brother was crown prince until his son was born, and they decided to go ahead and give the crown to the crown prince. But that caused a lot of tensions, and there's still tensions with the king of Jordan's younger brother and himself. And then you also have the case in Saudi Arabia where the initial king, had many wives and many, many, many children. And so what they've actually been doing in Saudi Arabia is going through basically all of his sons. And he died in the 50s, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. It's been a while. But they've been just successfully going through each of his sons. And so each of his sons kind of gets his term and then he, gracefully leaves. And so the crown prince, though, of Saudi Arabia right now, Mohammed bin Salam, is actually the first of the second generation, you could say. He's the second generation. So he's not one of the king's sons. He's one of his grandsons, or the original king of Saudi Arabia. So he's one of his grandsons. So anyways, just interesting things to know about the differences between how the Middle Eastern families work and the European families. So next we have King Felipe of Spain doing sort of a tour of the Baltic region. So this includes Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And he undertook this visit as part of essentially the broader security issues, you could say, going on within Europe, because all those three of those countries, of course, obviously border Russia. And the visits all focused on defense and security in the region and Europe in general. In Estonia, his visit was designed to deepen security and defense cooperation between the two countries. He met with President Alar Karas on June 23rd. From Estonia, then he traveled to Lithuania, where he visited an Air Force base and met with Spanish troops stationed there as part of the NATO security apparatus. The president thanked Felipe and Spain for the country's participation in securing the Baltic airspace and air policing efforts. The Lithuanian president said in an official statement, as part of the implementation of NATO's decisions and the strengthening of air defense in our region, the head of state made a proposal for Spain to consider contributing to the practical implementation of NATO's rotational air defense model by deploying air defense capabilities in Lithuania, the president's office said in a statement released on Monday. And then he also went to Latvia. And for clarity's sake, in terms of how you go through each of these countries, the top one is Estonia, the next one is Latvia, and the last one is Lithuania, because they go in alphabetical order. So if you're ever trying to remember what order the Baltic states are in, there Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Just giving you a little tip there. And in Latvia on June 25th, so he I guess visited Latvia last, which is kind of weird because again you go up, down, and then back up again. He visited troops at the Adzidi military base near Riga, and this is a contingent of NATO troops stationed there, including Spanish forces. Spain has also supplied the country with air, surface-to-air anti-aircraft missiles at the National Armed Forces Aviation Base in Leeuwarden. And what is interesting, again, to remember here in this situation is that oftentimes Russia does incur into NATO airspace, and so there is, again, a lot of tensions within this region. And you can just feel everything sort of starting to ratchet up a bit because obviously all the royals are talking about it because they all have obviously connections to the military. But there's also, again, general concerns about what is going on within Russia and what it might mean for the future of Europe. And next, guys, we have the Luxembourg National Day, which they celebrate every year on June 23rd, which is sort of considered the Grand Duke's official birthday, even though it is not his birthday. His birthday is April 16th. And so the night before June 22nd, there is a changing of the guard at the palace and a visit to a different town by the Grand Ducal couple in Luxembourg, with the day ending with a massive fireworks display. There is also a military parade and religious service called a Te Deum. Historically, the National Day changed dates depending on the birthday of the Grand Duke and was officially changed to June 23rd in 1961 by Grand Ducal order. Ironically, the term is in no official legal text, but instead is identified as the day of the official celebration of the anniversary of the Grand Duke's birth, which is obviously, again, like I said, not at this time. So it's just a way they do it. A couple other countries have very similar things, including the Netherlands, because again, most of these countries, these regions were formed centuries ago. And so they don't really have a traditional, like, this is the day our country was founded. In fact, you could say Bastille Day in France for the storming of the Bastille, which I think occurred in 1790s, I think. And that is now considered their national day. But it's not, of course, the country was around eons before that as well, in the terms of the people of France. So it just is very different. And so then how we celebrate here in the United States. So, and this was actually a very, very exciting moment as well, because Grand Duke Henri decided to announce that he will be retiring at some point in the future. He didn't give it a specific date, but he set the ball rolling and the steps in motion because he will appoint his son, Crown Prince Guadalupe, as his lieutenant representative. And so this came actually as a fairly big surprise to most at the ceremony. We'll see a bit of his speech here. And he said, "It is with all my love and confidence that I wish him good luck." And so this will happen in October. So this is a reflection of the changing of the guard, you could say, in Luxembourg, and that they're going ahead and deciding to do this is, I think, a great sign. It's very exciting, obviously, Guadalupe and Stephanie, that this is occurring. You can see him here, Grand Duke Henri, making this very special announcement. And this was not included in the initial press release sharing the speech. So this was something that the family kept close to the vest at the time. But Luxembourg, this transitioning of power, obviously the voluntary abdication is something that I think has been part of Luxembourg history. And I look forward to it being part of, I feel like most European families, I think this is a great way to go into the future. We'll see if more families decide to adopt this. Obviously, we have Queen Margrethe of Denmark who did it earlier this year. We have had abdications due to scandals. So this is King Juan Carlos in Spain, King Albert in Belgium. And so I think this will happen in more cases. But I'm excited for Guadalupe and Stephanie because I think they will make a wonderful Grand Ducal couple. But it'll be interesting to see because there's some fascinating dynamics within the Luxembourg royal household, which is that the Grand Duchess, you could sort of kind of call her the Meghan Markle of Luxembourg. She's had mostly terrible relationships with staff. There is actually an ongoing investigation into her treatment of staff members. This is Grand Duchess Maria Theresa, and she seems to be someone who sort of has a close hand on the purse strings because there have been many instances where her old dresses are worn by either her daughter or her daughter-in-law. And to be quite frank, the dresses just don't really work. And they either need to be remade or just the women have different body types and the dresses just don't work. And so there's an interesting question and thought process of, is Maria Theresa telling the ladies, hey, you need to wear this, or we can't get a new dress for you, but here you can wear one of my old ones. It might be something they requested, not saying that's not a possibility. But I have a sneaking suspicion based on somewhat what we know, I think Grand Duchess Maria Theresa will have a hard time giving up the reins of power. And so it'll be interesting to see what dynamic it develops as her son and her daughter-in-law take more and more of a center stage. I don't know how well she'll deal with it. So that'll be something that will definitely be interesting to see. And just for some fun, we also have some royal Swifties out there. Here we have Taylor Swift with Prince George or Princess Charlotte, and of course their dad, Prince William. And this was taken actually on his birthday. They went to the concert for his birthday. And we had other royals in attendance too, Zara and Micah Tyndall. We also had Princess Beatrice and her husband, and allegedly, reportedly, although we never got any pictures to confirm, Princess Leonor of Spain and her sister Infanta Sofia. Now, I think Taylor Swift had a concert in the Netherlands. I have not heard if any of the Dutch royals attended that particular concert. So it'll be interesting to see if we have more royals attending various concerts there for Taylor Swift. But I just thought that was really interesting and just goes to show, too, that yeah, royals are young. And I think this is a great picture. This is from the Kensington Palace Twitter account. Great to see the kids having so much fun. And obviously, mom, Catherine, is still recovering from cancer treatments, but it's great to see them get out and about and just all the other royals having a lot of fun at Taylor Swift concerts. All right, guys, that is it for this edition of the Crown Report. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something and enjoyed hearing more about the different families throughout Europe. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you guys again very, very soon. Bye.